Awards, ladies and gentlemen, please be upstanding for Her Majesty the Queen.
Haven't you had the Queen on the front row of your show?
Yes, I have had the Queen, and I think it was probably one of the best moments, apart from giving birth, ever in my whole life. Ladies and gentlemen, you asked me that question. No one's ever asked me that question before.
I smuggle in these like little tricky ones.
Yeah, and then Davina and I dressed up as bumblebees, and she said that's how she met everyone at MTV, apparently. I really want people to come away blown away.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Wild.
Welcome to the next episode of Entrepreneurs in the Wild, and I'm over the moon, delighted, thrilled to be joined today by fashion icon. Sara Blonstein. And she's going to spend a few minutes talking about herself in a second. But some of you who've seen the other episodes will notice that I've upgraded my fashion.
Have you?
For this particular episode. And yes, I've gone for a sort of lighter jacket.
I love it.
So, and that's very much in your honour. So I didn't really want to get into multicoloured Uggs or anything like that. I just couldn't pull it off. I've got 3 kids. So they would never let me live it down. But I'm delighted that you're here.
Thank you.
You've been working, I'm going to say culture. You're in the culture space and you're playing with music, with fashion, design and creativity all of the time to do extraordinary things. But I think it's better for you to say a few words about yourself because you'll do it much more accurately than I would.
Well, my current agency or company that I'm the founder of is Blonstein. That's been going for around 30 to 34 years. Yeah. It's a bit difficult to
counting?
say.
Yeah.
Who's counting? It seems so ridiculous because when I'm pitching on things and everyone's like 20 years younger and I say that, I'm not sure if I look kind of old and weird or like Barbara Streisand. I'm not sure.
How many times are you going to get Barbara Streisand into this?
I don't know. We're going to sing the song in a bit as well. Remember that song, Barbara Streisand? Try. Yeah, I do love her. Because she's Jewish, I'm Jewish. You know what I mean? We're basically the same. No, so Blonstein's been going for a long time and I'm the creative director and founder. And I started off in Clubland way before then. Originally, I was a stylist in the 80s and I styled people like Bros and Alison Limerick and the Blow Monkeys and people that no one's really heard of anymore. But they were big. They were big. I promise you they were big. And then I got from that into events. And I think it was because I started seeing all these empty venues and empty spaces. We were shooting pop videos and they were terribly unsafe and unhealthy. I remember being in one place and I'd literally had black nostrils when I left. In the 80s, you couldn't really sue anyone. And I thought, well, hang on a minute, I start doing parties in these spaces. And so the first thing I did was called the Pussy Posse, which was a kind of sort of post-feminist, transformative movement where everybody was a woman, apart from the men, obviously, but everyone who worked there was a woman. So DJ, security, bar staff, everything. And it was all about expressing yourself and being glamorous. It was a kind of antithesis to the rave culture, which I was dead against, actually. I quite like rave music now, but at the time I was like, oh no, this isn't very nice. We can't dress up anymore. And it was a sort of antithesis to that. And then I think my first kind of corporate client was Channel 4. But I've always been interested in fashion. At the age of 8, I said to my mum, I want to be a fashion journalist. I don't even know where I got that expression from, but and I never did become a fashion journalist, but I've always been involved and love fashion. And then, so it went from styling to kind of these big immersive events. First one being Channel 4 and then Sky TV, MTV and a load of other people after that, which we can talk about. But and then slowly but surely I started doing fashion shows. And I've ended up very much in the fashion show arena as one of the main producers of London Fashion Week, looking after all the NEWGEN designers, which is, you know, quite fabulous.
So what is it about fashion that excites you so much?
God, that's a really difficult question. I see it as a kind of, it's like a layer that is part of your day-to-day living. So some people go, well, what are you going to wear tomorrow? I don't know what I'm going to wear tomorrow. Like if we're going somewhere, I just wake up and I know that I want to wear something I find interesting and stylish. And I've just always loved it. That's an interesting. I can't believe you asked me that question. No one's ever asked me that question before.
I smuggle in these like little tricky ones.
Yeah.
Every now and again.
I mean, there's fashion and there's being fashionable and not being fashionable. And somehow there's this thing about anti-fashion, which can be quite fashionable in itself. Yes. Because if we're over-fashionable, I can't bear people who are top to toe in, designer clothes. I just find that terribly boring. And then fashion as a whole in the world is terribly important because it's about people expressing their art, and then that art goes on the person.
Yes.
And the person can buy into that expression and that art just by putting a pair of sunglasses on or a jacket on, or, so it's culture and art and history and everything. And of course, fashion repeats itself. So we're all kind of like, well, that's very 70s, or that's very 90s, or that's very turn of the century, or that's very Egyptian, or that. So it's all kind of copying itself anyway. And then, of course, you've got this kind of political thing that's going on with fashion as well. So there's political statements that go on as well. So it's multifaceted. Yes. And the other thing about fashion, actually, I've got one point about fashion, which is quite interesting, about fashion shows, anyway, high fashion, is that I think when people watch beautiful people walking in front of them, it stops them, they feel less close to death.
Yeah.
No, seriously. Because what it is you lose yourself in this kind of feeling that you're seeing this beautiful creature, whether it's male or female or trans or whatever, walk in front of you with this fantastic music and these amazing and you somehow picture yourself as if you're that person wearing those clothes, and it kind of keeps death away. It's an odd thought, but I have been peddling that one for a bit.
But I think that you are like cutting edge culture. You're shaping opinion, what people love, like you're stirring the pot, you're igniting passion, you're creating conversations, and I think that's really visceral and it's got really deep kind of meaning. But you also see it, I think, in music, you see it in sport, you see it in lots of other kind of cultural genres, I think.
You do.
And I think you get the same kind of effect, that kind of, this is what it is to be alive, you know what I mean? As well as bonding, aligning with tribes and, understanding more about yourself and communicating.
Of course. The tribal thing is key in fashion. Thank you. I even forgot about that. So yes, aligning with other people, that's that whole thing. Oh my God, what's that person wearing? I won't talk to them, which is a bit odd and it's a bit shallow, but it bloody goes on, doesn't it? So because I've got two strings to my bow, one is being creative director for a lot of the brand stuff, the immersive stuff. And in fashion, it's slightly different. I offer a kind of very beautiful blank canvas, because the stars of the show ain't me. I'm like the roadie. So I have to see what they want and then make it happen for them and advise with my cultural head on and my experience. But my job is to set the canvas as beautifully and as, cheaply, because we don't have as much money as the French, and make that happen as well as possible. So I'm like the roadie when it comes to fashion shows, but I'm the creative director when it comes to brands.
Yes.
Big brands.
And that's really important. And it's important to be able to do both of those things.
Yeah.
Because for me to trust you, I need to know you get it.
Yeah.
And that means you're also able to kind of speak a language and push the boundaries and pull off things that are sort of talked about, remembered, and again, emotional. And I can imagine, given how successful your career has been and how long you have been at the top of this particular industry.
Weird, isn't it?
Your reputation, your trust is all kind of, it all hinges on your ability to be both a creator, catalyst, and a sort of an enabler as well.
I suppose so. I'm not as big as I'd like to be. I think I would have liked to have been bigger. I kind of mentioned this when we met yesterday.
How big would you want to be?
Just, I haven't got a Wikipedia. I did try and put one up. Yeah, but hypnotherapy. I love hypnotherapy, by the way. It's just been fantastic. I don't know if you've ever tried it.
I haven't actually.
Oh, it's so good. It's so quick.
Oh, really?
Oh, God, yeah. It's like that.
So when you had hypnotherapy, what was it for specifically? impossible, or was it something else?
Oh no, I've had I'm a very passionate person. I know it's so ridiculous even saying that. So in life and in love, and I've had quite a few heartbreaks. So I've had the hypno originally I went because I can't go downstairs. I do one stair at a time. What it is, I fell down a hole in a sweet shop when I was 4.
Right.
And I just fell to the bottom. And so
a hole in a sweet shop?
Yeah, there was like a trap door was open.
Right.
And we're so digressing. And I reached for, entrepreneurially, some sweets.
Yeah.
And I didn't know the trap door was open. And I fell all the way down into this cellar. Yeah. And ever since then, I haven't been able to go downstairs. So I originally went to the hypnotherapist so I could go downstairs. And he said, shall we deal with your abandonment issues first? And I went, okay.
So you're like a pretty good customer then for this. Yeah. You're like, where do we start?
Exactly. But then I think that's all part of it, isn't it? And I think that's what my clients quite like as well, to be honest, that I am quite real and, quite open and, dare I say, loving at times anyway.
Well, I think having spoken to quite a few entrepreneurs now, I can tell you that passion is a big thing.
Yes.
It's often about, they know themselves, that they know what they want from the world around them. Normally it means that they can't get it in a company, so they go off and do it for themselves. But also... I
think that's very true, what you just said about doing it for yourself. I've always said, it's my life, I would do it my way. And it's always been like that. And that has been a problem in the past when I haven't understood what the client wanted enough. But I've completely got over that now. I mean, this is like 20 years ago or whatever, because I had some super huge clients. And I think I got just 2, no, we can't do it that way. We've got to do it that way. And I've learned how to sort of wheedle through and make that much better. So it's still good, but of course they're getting what they're getting. It's their money.
And your thing around imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
So I've also seen that quite a lot as well in quite a few entrepreneurs.
Have you?
And it's because... It's not like you go to sort of entrepreneur school or something and you get a certificate and then you're allowed to be one. It's a process, it's a journey, and a lot of it's about trial and error.
It's totally about trial and error. I mean, the ultimate entrepreneur obviously is Dyson, isn't it? I love that story. It was 100, it was 1,000 Hoovers, was it? You can't say Hoovers. 1,000 vacuum cleaners, and then he got to the perfect one.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Yeah.
So he's the ultimate.
Just by definition, it's got to be a journey. You never really know where you're at in your journey, and you never really know if you're sort of winning or losing either. So it does create a sort of odd cocktail of psychology, if you like.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I felt that too. So that when we first started up, I wasn't. I would have never. First of all, I would have never thought of myself as an entrepreneur, and I didn't know how I fitted in, or I felt awkward being in London as well. That's the other thing. I'm from like nowhere,
Stockport, you said,
so it's like
Stockport sounds like Stockpot, doesn't it?
Well, it does, but it's actually worse than that. I was from Buxton, which is like a town in the hills. So,
but isn't there a Buxton Water?
There is.
Oh, there
That's
you go.
One of the things that makes Buxton, great. But would you see yourself as an entrepreneur?
It's interesting because I suppose I am. Because I've always done my own thing and I've made it work, and things have worked and they haven't worked. So that's one thing. We always feel like with entrepreneurs, they've sort of built stuff up and then sold their company or something. And that's sort of part of being an entrepreneur. But I don't think it is. Yes, I suppose I am. I mean, it's like, I think that most entrepreneurs don't know they are. But yes, I suppose I am. But what I'm interested in is how many people I would say now are entrepreneurs. Naturally, young people, because young people, I suppose an entrepreneur is also someone who doesn't work for someone else in a PAYE situation, even if they're top of their game in a PAYE situation. And so young people now are just incredible. I mean, they're literally, I call it the ///, where they've got, multiple jobs. They literally don't work. They work for themselves. They're trying new things. Are they a producer? Are they, cutting music for people? Are they a photographer? Are they also working, somewhere else? I mean, it's just fascinating. And the whole idea of the influencer.
Yeah.
I mean, the influencer is massive. And they are all little mini entrepreneurs, aren't they? Because they're starting from nothing, trying shit out and seeing what happens and making packs of money.
Yeah.
So, I think there's more entrepreneurs than there have ever been.
We had a previous guest, a guy called Mike Craddock, who started off as a gamer. And he was like a professional professional gamer in like Call of Duty or whatever, and he became a creator influencer, and he's now created a company, and he's got like 100 creators on his books.
There you go.
The job of his business is to help those creators kind of monetize their brand through social and through content, through partnerships with brands and so on. And it's like, it's incredible. It's incredible and they're all young. They're all just having a go.
Oh, they're all in their 20s.
But it's a lot of them are incredibly professional, and they know who they are. They know why they're doing it, and it's all passion driven.
My events are transformative. They're not in a hotel or, you know what I mean, in a tent.
Yeah, I mean that's why I think of you as culture. You're like it's imaginative, it's emotional, it carries, you know what I mean? It has a meaning. I've
got a funny little story. So during the pandemic, which of course was an absolute disaster as far as what we do is concerned. So I applied to the Arts Council. They had this whole thing called the Culture Recovery Fund. I thought, like you said, culture recovery definitely needs some recovery. Not working, haven't worked for 6 months. Yeah,
thank you.
And of course, most people were going for about 50 grand or 100. I decided to go for 500, of course. Ridiculous. And so I came up with this whole thing. It was called IRL, in real life, because everyone was like URL, weren't they? So I said, it's IRL, we're going to bring it back. It's fashion, it's music, it's culture. It's at the Truman Brewery. It's going to be amazing. And I actually got loads of people involved. And I actually spent like a couple of months working out this really intense document. Eventually it came through and I didn't win. And they gave us a rundown of why I didn't win. So I got, out of 10, for cultural relevance, 10, which I was very excited about. And then value for money, 0.
Oh, really?
Value for money, 0.
How did they give you that score? Do you know what was...
I have no idea. Apparently, I didn't put enough of how it was going to permeate through the global markets or something or other. I don't know if it got missed off or it was a typo, but I was like, really detailed documentation, I had all these different people involved. Anyway, it was a funny story. When you said culture, it just made me think of it.
It isn't only like young influencers at the front row of your shows. Haven't you had the Queen on the front row of your show?
Yes, I have had the Queen. And I think it was probably one of the best moments, apart from giving birth, ever in my whole life. I didn't give birth at the same time, obviously, as the Queen being there. But funnily enough, the Queen at the fashion show, which I'll tell you a story about that in a minute, but I nearly didn't go. And I've learned to delegate over the years, and I've got very, very good teams. I'm still kind of overarching, knowing what's going on, and I've got a very strong spidey sense. I know when something is needed. In fact, thank God I had the spidey sense on this one. But I think I over-delegated in a way nearly then because I nearly didn't go on the Tuesday. So it was the Tuesday of fashion, which is always the bit of like, oh, Fashion Week's done. And it was a very young designer called Richard Quinn. And I knew my fabulous producers. They were all there. I had my production managers. It was all set up at 180 The Strand. It was all fabulous. And I was literally going, oh, God, I don't know if I can go. And then thank God I went. And the reason why we didn't know, the only reason the Queen was going to come is if no one knew. So there was an NDA and only 3 people knew. One was my production manager that I didn't knew because he wasn't allowed to tell me. And there was 2 people at the BFC and that was it. So I arrived about an hour before she arrived. I checked everything. Everything was great backstage. And then my client from the British Fashion Council said, Sara, can you sign this NDA? Because someone's very important coming. And I was going, oh God, it's Theresa May, isn't it? Oh God, this is so
please
dull.
No.
So dull, so dull, so dull, I can't bear it. And he goes, just sign it. So I signed it and he goes, the Queen's coming in an hour. And I was like, oh, for fuck's sake. And he goes, and you have to announce her. I had to announce the Queen.
And so did you get a bit of a briefing on how
Yes, I got a thing from the palace, which of course I slightly changed. And the whole thing was that everyone had to be upstanding when she came, which of course not everyone's sitting down when a show starts. And then there's a whole thing that please don't leave afterwards because there's going to be a prize giving afterwards. So I can't remember what it was now. But anyway, I had to say, ladies and lords, ladies and gentlemen, please be upstanding for Her Majesty the Queen. But it was so brilliant because she literally looked like a meme. She was very healthy at the time. And she sat next to Anna Wintour on the front row. And of course, the clothes, it was Richard Quinn's first show. And it was gimp masks, as in black gimp masks and floral dresses and motorbike helmets with thrash metal. When I heard the soundtrack, I said to the sound guys, I think we should just, lower the level. And everyone was going, Sara, what on earth is wrong with you? And I was going, I just think it's for old people's ears. It might be a bit loud. And they go, you never say turn the music down. You always say turn it up. So it was very funny.
And was there a particular reason that she picked that show?
Yes. She picked it because it was the Queen's Award. That's how they managed to get it. So Angela Kelly, who was her best friend and dresser, who Charles has ceremoniously sent up north now. Yeah. Angela Kelly and Caroline Rush, who's the head of the British Fashion Council, and they came up with this idea and they wrote the Queen in because Angela and the Queen were best friends. And it was a sustainability award and Richard Quinn won it first. And of course that launched his career. But, it's a wonderful thing to say the Queen, she's only ever sat front row, at my show.
That's incredible. But you've also worked with the most amazing, Davina McCall, you worked with MTV, you've done the Olympics. When you sort of look back, you've done some amazing
well, there's
things.
So many. I don't even know where to start. I mean, Davina and I met years and years ago in Clubland. And Davina said on a podcast that she did recently that I'm the reason why she ended up working for MTV, which I couldn't believe. I actually tried to ring her afterwards and she haven't been out for dinner yet. I was like, what are you talking about? But we did a thing where we launched MTV together in Europe and we both dressed up as cleaning ladies on a train. And then we dressed up as bumblebees because we faked it. They thought they were going on a train, and then the train took them to an airport, and it was people like Duran Duran and the Pet Shop Boys. That was all those sort of pop stars at the time on the train. And then we had Arthur Smith, the comedian. That was my idea, and he pretended to be the train driver, and he pretended he was on acid. He goes, Sara, I'm going to pretend I'm on acid. Is that okay? I went, oh, that sounds great. And then Davina and I dressed up as bumblebees, and she said that's how she met everyone at MTV, apparently. So, but I also gave Graham Norton his first job, actually. And Graham has said that is true. His first paid commercial job I gave him because when I was doing the Pussy Posse, he was doing a thing called Mother Teresa, where he used to put a tea towel on his head and pretend to be Mother Teresa. And that's how he started. And I apparently was the first person to ever pay it. Yeah, so there's so many stories. I mean, one of my favourite ones recently, actually, was two favourite stories. One is when we brought the Red Army Choir to the island of Les Zombies for the Pernod Ricard family to relaunch Stolly. And we had to go literally through the head of the foreign minister who someone knew, and we got them on the plane. When they arrived, they drank a bottle of vodka each, which was absolutely fantastic.
It just settles the nerves a bit, doesn't it?
It settles the nerves, yeah. So we had 50 Red Army Choir. And then that's a lovely story. And then the other one I love as well is when we went to Harlem just before the pandemic, 2019, with Ozwald Boateng, because he said, I want to do a show in New York. And I said, you've got to do it at the Harlem Apollo. We had about a 90 person cast, which is big for a show. A lot of shows are only about 36 models. So this was 90. And it was predominantly a black cast. Yeah. Which it seems totally normal now because all the shows I do, we are now predominantly 80% black in the shows. But then in 2019, it was still unusual. It's amazing the shift that's happened. And so Ozwald did this show in the Harlem Apollo, and all the people from downtown came up down. And some people were saying things like, I've never been to Harlem before, people who lived in New York. And I was like, what the hell is wrong with you? So that was an amazing show. And then at the Apollo afterwards, they said to us, because they'd never had a fashion show there, and they said, you were the greatest touring company that ever been here. And what they meant were, you were the greatest white touring company ever been there. You know what I mean? Which was absolutely fantastic.
So just hearing you talk and hear about these amazing things, so you're really pushing the boundaries.
Yeah,
some of this
always.
stuff.
Yeah.
And you're always asking questions, and there's a lot of risk here, and there is something important about entrepreneurs. They're sort of a bit more okay with risk.
Yeah, calculated risk.
And it's to do with their passion. Their passion means that they just sort of feel like they need to push it a bit further. But are there times when, and I get this strong sense that you need that edge, like as a person, you need that, you need that feeling of jeopardy almost. It's like this, I'm not sure how this is going to go.
It's true.
Do you see that in yourself?
Yes, I think, yes, I do like to push the boundaries, and just never really liked anything too normal. But I don't think other people do either. Most people, and if they do want something normal, we're not the people for them. I think that's in my personal life as well, and also in my work life. But I wouldn't do it to the point of jeopardizing somebody's, money or somebody's idea. We've got to push the boundaries, but we've got to do it together.
No, you're right. I can see that. It's like you're on the edge though.
We're on the edge.
Because it goes back to what you said about your spidey sense, which is quite an interesting sort of idea. And that's about instinct, and that's about just knowing where that edge is, and
where it is.
Yeah, what is it getting too risky, and then stepping in to manage that.
Yeah. I'm sure I've got some risky stories, but I can't really remember them now. You never do. It's like having a baby, isn't it? You just can't remember the worst ones. There's definitely been some risky stuff. But it's always all right in the end.
And because you through intervention, personality, talent, you make it all right. You know what I mean? It's not accidental. It's
no.
You make it work. You make it engaging and exciting and work and feel visceral for the audiences that you're working with.
I think that's also you've hit on something very important for me, is that I really want people to come away blown away.
Yeah.
That's really important.
That's a high bar, isn't it?
It is a high bar, and I really want them to be blown away. And if something's boring, I'm just like, oh my God, that was really boring. I can't believe we just did that. And I hate that. I hate anything boring. So I try and make everything, really just completely fabulous to the point where I know that our percentage that we take as an agency is less than a lot of other people's.
Yeah.
Actually, it's not bad. It's a normal percentage, but I know that other people take more.
Yeah.
And all my freelancers tell me, they go, so-and-so takes blah, 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 blah. And I said, I know, but they don't do what we do. They said, no, you don't. They don't.
So you worked with the Olympics. So it'd be good just to unpack that a little bit more, because as we spoke before, and we've done some work with the Olympics, and obviously we found that incredibly rewarding. We did Wenlock and Mandeville, the Olympic mascots.
Yeah, that's so brilliant.
During 2012, and obviously really, really hard work, but incredibly high quality sort of work that was valuable culture in these sort of digital first mascots that were customizable.
That's brilliant.
And incredibly rewarding, incredibly and famous. They were massive coup for us as a business.
I think you started that look then of that kind of mascot, no?
Well, yeah. I remember really clearly the process we went through in order to get that work. And I think that they thought we were a risk. They didn't really understand it. I think they wanted
Seb
something.
Coe involved as well?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I remember they wanted something a little bit more kind of understandable, a teapot, a lion, you know what I mean? Something a bit more...
3 lions on classic, a shirt, but not quite.
But, we were saying, no, it's melting pot. It was the idea and this ability to sort of make it what you want it to be. And then, obviously, we spent a long time talking to the sort of merchandise and toy industry to sort of get a sense of, how would they make this work in reality, so that, again, they could monetize it. And then, obviously, it was a point in time when the sort of digital space was, people had the tools, and it was actually quite easy to sort of create, digital mascots that you could make yourself. And then put into storylines and the rest of it. But no, you work in the Olympics as well at the same time, weren't you?
With Olympiad, the cultural Olympiad, as it was called. I don't know what the reference is. No, we had to do this really weird secret thing where we had to put hats on all the major statues in London overnight, one night, and one of them was Nelson. And everyone said, we had to do Nelson. So we literally built Nelson's head and put a hat the hat we were going to put on him, because it was all done by the famous milliners as well. So it came through the British Fashion Council and the Mayor's Office and Grazia magazine. And we made a model of Nelson's head and then put it in a wind tunnel and then put the hat on to see if it would come off, because that was one of the first things that everyone was freaking out about, that we were going to kill people. Because he also Nelson had the torch as part of the hat.
Yeah.
But then there was more stuff happened. There were these kestrels that were nesting in Nelson's eyes and ears. And apparently they nest every year. So we had to get permission from them when they had flown the nest. And we persuaded them to let us put the hat on Nelson and all these other statues. And of course, statues' heads are not the size of our heads. They are all different sizes. So every hat was bespoke. So overnight, all the statues were covered with these fantastic Philip Treacy and Stephen Jones and these enormous, fantastic hats. Nelson was wearing a hat by Lock & Co., which is actually the company that made his real hat originally when he was Nelson and he was alive. But this was a neoprene new hat with the torch coming out. Anyway, so that was our involvement in the Olympics, and the Mayor's Office has been a client ever since. Yeah, we really get on well with them.
Yeah, no, I can imagine, because again, if you're the Mayor's Office, you want someone that gets the sort of canvas of this city and the sort of edge and opportunities that are in it as well. You've also done quite a lot of work. I mean, you do a lot of work with young people. And you're also really into like derelict space. So I'm keen to sort of understand a bit more about that. Yeah.
Now, I think that started, like I said, with that whole pop video period, because I was seeing all these empty spaces. I just love old buildings and old architecture. When I say old, I mean we can go brutalist, don't mind a bit of brutalism now, so it doesn't have to be that old. And then even into 90s, but it's just this idea of this abandoned buildings, that you can repurpose into something else. It's always been a total fascination of mine. And I just love the idea. I call them virgin venues. And I've just got so excited. I've got a new virgin venue for a client that we just pitched on. Big French brand, I'm going to say. But a virgin venue is my favorite thing. And what it is, it's not for the faint-hearted, because a lot of these buildings don't have any power, don't have any toilets, don't have any floors. Not floors, I mean, they've got floors, but you know what I mean? They don't have, but I quite like that bit of concrete. And you bring everything in, everything, kitchens, if there's food or, all the lighting, all the sound. So I've moved the London Fashion Week NEWGEN, which is about 16, 17 shows a season. I moved that to the old Selfridges Hotel, which is I call it derelict. It's not really, but it's a stripped out hotel that was the Thistle, I think. There's a lovely film on YouTube with Johnny Morris going around it in the 80s. And it's just like, I don't want to kill yourself. It's boring. But it's amazing when you think that's where it was. And so that is a totally empty venue with literally the ceilings and the wires are all hanging down. There is no toilets. We bring the toilets in. We do this every season. There's a bit of power because we made them bring more power. Yeah. So we're sort of coming off the buzz bars with the power. But all the lighting, all the sound, all the walls. I put these fake concrete walls in last time, which I got very excited about. Found this new product, which looks like concrete, but it's MDF. And so people came in and went, oh, I love the concrete walls in here. No, they're all fake. It's set, So that is totally my thing. And I've got another little funny story. We've got time?
Of course. Always time for a funny story. Make time.
Okay, make time for a story. So that Selfridges is fun, and obviously people don't really know what's real and what's fake there. But this one is brilliant. So many years ago, I was working for Sky TV when Sky TV were, kind of cool. So it was pre-Netflix. So I actually remember the year. It was 2001 because I said, oh, it's 2001. Let's do a whole Kubrick thing, And I found a building that is now it's a nice building. It's the Victoria Insurance Building, which is called something else, on the square by Sicilian Avenue. It's a lovely building now. It's called something else. It's just offices. Anyway, it was empty. And we did a homage to Kubrick. And every room was a different Kubrick movie. But I said, it's a hotel. It's called Hotel 2001. I just came up with a load of old stuff. And Sky TV. It was 3,000 people we used to do those parties for. And so it was called Hotel 2001 or Hotel Kubrick or something. And it was mental, you know. We did the whole milk bar, and we did all these other scenes from, you know, the one about the Dr. Strangelove, and every floor, every area was a Kubrick inspired experience. And right at the end, everyone was absolutely pissed. And right at the end, one of the Sky executives, you know, one of the last ones to go, said, I need to ring a cab. I can't get home. I said, okay, hang on a minute. So I opened this door, which was literally everything had been thrown in, all the flight cases and everyone's coats and rubbish and everything. And I said, hang on a minute. I opened the door and the person went, what kind of hotel is this? I went, it's not a hotel. It's a derelict building.
Yeah, put yourself together. So you mentioned this big French company.
Yes.
So when you are like pitching for something, how does that work? You know, I mean, they'll come to you knowing who you are and what to expect.
They don't pay, which I'm not that happy about. I don't know in advertising.
They don't pay for the ideas.
No, they're not paying for any pitching. Nobody gets paid. I mean, do you get paid in advertising for pitching?
It varies. Some good clients will pay you for the pitch. It just depends.
No, it doesn't happen. So you spend about 3 weeks really building something quite big that you hope you win. And a lot of that's done digitally now. I remember years ago turning up with huge boards, and, you know, I actually quite like that. It's much more visceral.
Yeah.
But we do beautiful decks now with fantastic renders and big, solid ideas, you know, that are definitely different. And it's about the venue, it's about what happens, you know, the performance or whatever. And just, it's always, for me, it's about a point of difference. You know, how can you be different enough from anybody else? And they go, oh my God, that picture is different. And then you win it. And we do win quite a lot. I get really upset when we don't.
Of course. I mean, one of the essences of the entrepreneur is that they're competitive.
Of course.
That's just been an amazing time for me, just to learn about you and your process and also your spirit of entrepreneurialism, and that's been incredible. But if you were to sort of give the younger Sara Blonstein some advice, what would you say to yourself? I will
tell you my one regret.
Go on.
I left university after 1 year. And I wish I had done a degree and even an MA. I mean, everything would have been different, of course, because that's that whole sliding door thing. But I just wish I'd done a proper university degree.
What were you studying?
Fine art, which I shouldn't have been, really. It was all a bit mad in the 80s. I was meant to go to London College of Printing and do a film photography and video, which was based in advertising. And I may have ended up as a commercials director and maybe even a film director. Who knows? But that's a total sliding door moment. But I just wish I'd finished So my thing to my younger self would have been, come on, stick out your university course. You know, it was only a couple of years extra. But I ain't done too bad.
You definitely haven't done too bad, and it was exciting to hear you talk, and moving as well. It was it's brilliant. So thank you so much.
Pleasure.
For joining me.
Pleasure.
So thank you for tuning in to this episode of Entrepreneurs in the Wild. Please feel free to access this particular episode wherever you get your podcasts from. Thank you.